Everyone's joining.
Grace and peace to you from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Welcome. So glad that you're joining us tonight from all over the place, in Northern California especially, but I know there'll be people joining us from everywhere. We're going to get started with a word of prayer tonight. We're going to sing and worship, and then Lauren and I are going to share more about our family and what we're going to do. Lord, thank you so much thanks for this special place. It's just been a month, and it's so great to be back in this building. And brings up a lot of memories. We love you, Lord. We love you, and we are thankful for the years that we had here in Concord, and we're grateful for the way that you have been calling and preparing our family. Thank you for our friends and colleagues and those that we don't know that are out there logging in right now and participating with us. And thank you for the chaos and mess of a family and three young kids. We praise you tonight, and may everything that we do, may our lives be praised to you. Amen.
Amen.
Sorry.
I can't hear it. There we go. All right. Let's try it again.
Captive hearts release the hurt.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best God, by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my life. Be thou my wisdom, and thou my true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, and I thy true child. Thou in me dwelling, and I with thee one. Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance, now and always. Thou and thou only be first in my heart. High King of heaven, my treasure thou art. High King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's joys, oh bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, O ruler of all. God of justice, Savior to all, came to rescue the weak and the poor, chose to serve and not be served. Jesus, you have called us. Freely we've received, now freely we will give. We must go, live to feed the hungry, stand beside the broken. We must go, stepping forward, keep us from just seeming, move us into action. We must go to act justly every day, loving mercy in every way, walking humbly before you, God. You have shown us what you require. freely we will give. We must go, live to feed the hungry, stand beside the broken. We must go, stepping forward, keep us from just singing, move us into action. We must go. Fill us up and send us out. Fill us up and send us out. Fill us up and send us out, Lord. Fill us up and send us out. Fill us up and send us out. Fill us up and send us out, Lord. Fill us up and send us out. Fill us up and send us out. Fill us up and send us out, Lord. We must go, live to feed the hungry, stand beside the broken. We must go, stepping forward, keep us from just singing, move us into action. We must go, we must go, live to feed the hungry, stand beside the broken. We must go, stepping forward, keep us from just singing, move us into action. We must go.
Well, it's great to be with you all. I think there were a few that maybe had some technical difficulties at first. We started a couple minutes late, but hopefully you're here with us now. A couple folks had some questions that they sent in to me, and the Zoom interaction is going to be an interactive conversation. That's going to take place after this at 7 p.m. Pacific time, wherever you're at. Obviously, just add about 45 minutes to that. So just to get us started tonight, thank you so much to those who came and helped put on some songs. We're going to have one more song at the end to help create an atmosphere of worship. In this day and age, it's hard to do that, and I appreciate the ability to do so. But we're here to share just a little bit with you all, especially with the Northern California District Church of the Nazarene, with Christ Community Church of the Nazarene here where we are. Our church, our former church to pastor, but our present church that we are members of and so forth. And then also with friends and colleagues and those we don't know all over the country and the world. Basically, we are getting ready to embark on quite an adventure, a journey that's exciting and scary to go to Kenya, to Nairobi, Kenya, where I will be serving as a professor of theology at African Nazarene University there, and Lauren will be serving as an elementary teacher, teaching first grade at the West Nairobi School, where our children will also be attending. We're going to be going with the Church of the Nazarene through Global Missions as sponsored missionaries, enabling us to go and to work and live in Nairobi as teachers, as educators, and we're grateful for that. We're grateful for our global church. I'm a first-generation Nazarene, so is Lauren, and we're still getting we're still figuring things out, but our denomination has a rich heritage that we have been very glad to be a part of for over 20 years, and are glad to raise our kids in this and to expose them to what the church is like internationally. The global church is something I'm really passionate about. Yes, Lily's a second generation. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to teach and to help develop the global church in a place where young women and men are coming to faith and looking for discipleship and education so that they can go and be leaders in their churches, in their world, in our world, leaders in our denomination. We'll talk about that more later. But that's the short of it, is that we have made the decision. We were invited to do so and considered prayerfully and have made the decision to leave a wonderful church Christ community, for those of you that are watching, we love you and we miss you. It's been a weird month to not be your pastors here. But to go and to follow what we believe is the calling of God in our lives, to go to Africa and serve. And as a result, now our lives are in sort of upheaval as we're almost done selling about a third or more of our possessions, and we're loading up probably more than that, and we're loading up about a third of them into a shipping container to go across the ocean, and then we have to try to get as much as we can onto a plane. And then you add in all the travel bans and all the crazy stuff with the virus, and it's a pretty complex time. Why would we do all of that? We feel called to do so, and we feel like this is what God has been leading and preparing us for. And Lauren and I are going to share more about that in just a minute. With that introduction about what we're doing and why we're here, and I should also say one of the reasons that we're doing this is that originally we had something planned as a zone, as a district, that we were going to gather here in person with all the churches in our zone to something we call the Valley Rally Plus, and we were going to share our story, but because of the coronavirus, we weren't able to do so. We were invited to be the missionary speakers and to be commissioned at the district assembly that happened a week ago, and we were so excited about that, and we were still able to do so in a way, but we couldn't gather physically, and so our district superintendent, Reverend Albert Hunt, yeah, he's watching, I know. It said, hey, if you get a chance, just put together a service and we will advertise it. So this is sort of our missionary service that would have been at the district assembly, broadcast in this way to try to get to as many of you as we possibly can. So that's kind of what we're doing here tonight and why we're doing that. Well, before Lauren and I share more, our daughter Lily wanted to share a little bit about what we're doing and what she's thinking about all this. So Lily's going to share a few words with you. I'm going to set this board I made. This is how Lauren and I announced to the kids what we were doing. I'm going to set this up here and hold it for her, and she's going to talk for just a minute. Hold this?
I can hold it.
Okay. You probably can't see this very well at home, but that's okay. You can talk about it, Lily.
Will you get me a microphone stand?
Speak into the microphone.
I said, will you get me a microphone stand?
No.
My name is Lily Bryan, and he's my daddy. I am very excited to have this wonderful opportunity and experience. I will be telling you about the board I brought. First, our new friends. The Kenyon family at the top is a man who is a friend of my dad. That is Gift. Judy is his wife, and Nathan is his young boy. 1 minute. Rod and Sarah Reed are our honorary aunt and uncle. I don't know much about Evie and Dawn, but I know they live at the compound and are very nice. The Alleys live there in Kenya, and there is a monkey named Fred. And Nairobi is a big city and is very welcoming to me. I want to go there. There are lots of animals, and there's a soda machine at the office there. I love that soda machine. I hope to stay in contact with you. I will miss you. And I was upset when my dad told me, but I warmed up. I had asked if we could move there a week before I was told that we were going to move there. I'm excited to see my favorite animal, giraffes. I will go to a wonderful international school called West Nairobi School. Goodbye for now. Any questions I can answer at the Zoom.
So yeah, and if you didn't catch that, Lily said that interestingly enough, that 1 week before we told her, she's actually asked many times over the last 4 or 5 years to move to Africa, interestingly, but she asked 1 week before, and so we knew what was coming, so we talked to her very, very clearly about that and kind of probed her, and it was interesting that she felt that way. Thanks, Lily, for sharing. Well, so we already introduced just a little bit about what we're doing, where we're going, and why. And afterwards, again, at 7 o'clock, there's a link for this for Zoom, and anybody anywhere can log into that and can ask us questions, personal, like, Lily, what soda are you looking forward to about the soda machine? Or, those sorts of questions, right? But we're going to share a little bit about our calling and kind of mini versions of our testimonies. And then, since he can't be here in person, given the social distancing rules here, our district superintendent, Albert Hung, has sent in a few questions that we're going to respond to as a way of, instead of being interviewed, he's interviewed us in that way. So I'm going to let Lauren start off.
Hi, it's so wonderful to be in this room and to see the faces of those who are here. Thank you for being here with us. We love you so much. I can't talk too much about that or I'm going to cry. But we love you. We love our church here, and we are going to miss you terribly. I've always loved the verse, Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I think I've always loved that verse because I'm always tired. I love to nap. And I wanted, there's so much I could share with you tonight about how I know that God has used so much of our lives to prepare us for this next step of our journey. But I was reflecting recently and realizing that God has used this calling process in particular to show me how light his burden and his yoke is. I've always loved the idea of that, but I'm not sure I've ever really felt the lightness of it. A lot of times it's felt like pressure and heaviness. I was raised in a Christian home and family. I had parents who always brought me to know that Jesus loved me and I was part of God's family. And I'm so grateful for that and for the many churches who loved on me throughout my life and my journey, who have prayed for me, who took me on youth trips, who took me to Point Loma, which I ended up going to, and who had loved on us as we got married and had children and just lived in the different seasons of our lives. We've always been surrounded by our own Christian family, but also many church families. From a very young age, I also knew that I would be a teacher. I love children. I love teaching. There's some part of me that comes alive in the classroom. I love teaching children. I could read books about teaching children all day, every day. I get really excited about school supplies. You know, that area of Target where they have dollar school supplies? That is a little bit of a kryptonite to me, also the dollar store. But I know that is a God-given passion and a gift. So I've always had a call to teach. When I was in high school, I'm actually not quite a first-generation Nazarene. Both my parents and grandparents have been a part of the Church of the Nazarene. And when I was in high school, one of my favorite sometimes youth sponsors, because she was older and in college, so she would come home occasionally, but her fiance was a missionary and worked with a mission organization. And he came and spoke on a Sunday night and told us about his work in China. And I was fascinated by the stories of those who would risk their lives to share the hope of the gospel with people living in fear and darkness. And there was a part of me that felt a call to go. And I didn't know what that looked like, but I told God then that I would go, that I would always be open to going. And that willingness has served me well because we've been called to go a lot. There's another moment that was instrumental in, I think, this part of our journey. And I was at Point Loma, and I was at a bonfire, as you often are when you're a student at Point Loma, a bonfire on the beach. And I was hanging out and having a great time with my classmates, and a young man who was homeless came over. And it was very clear that he was cold, and some part of me was so disturbed thinking about my friends and the fun that we were having, and this young man, our age, in so much need. All I had to give him was my sweatshirt. I gave him my sweatshirt, and I went home weeping and just questioning a lot of my life and what it meant to follow Christ. And I felt that God, in my spirit, just told me that I could build a really cute, comfortable life for myself. in the classroom, marrying a pastor, and that we could have a really cute life. But that was not following Christ. That Christ was calling us to serve and to leave comfort at times. There are times we get to be comfortable as Christians, and that's fantastic. We've been comfortable a lot. We're comfortable now in many ways. But I felt that God was calling me to be open to putting that away and calling me to have eyes to see the world in need. That when we come to know Christ, we don't just earn a ticket to heaven and life is fabulous, but we get to be a part of the work of God in the world. And so all of these things have kind of led up to this point. There was one more kind of major point that I've been thinking about, and it happened in this room. And it was last January at the IF gathering. I was sitting with Jenny and Sue and Molly. Over there. And there was so much good speaking. If you haven't been a part of the IF gathering, you definitely should, because there's just so much. It's overwhelming. But at the time, I was really actively pursuing a book business, which I loved. I'm a teacher. I love books. But God very clearly showed me that I had come to a point where what I could achieve and make happen for me and my family and the recognition that I may earn was becoming too important to me. And it was becoming my identity, because I had been a mom for a really long time. And those of you with children or who have been around families with children know that your identity can really get absorbed by that. And so it felt really good to have something that was mine, that I could achieve, that I could earn money and just feel really good about myself. But I very clearly heard the Lord telling me to give that up. And boy, it was painful. I did not want to do that. I actually texted two of my friends, women in this congregation, and I said, God's asking me to do something I really don't want to do. But I know that it's going to be for my good. And so I need you to check with me and make sure that I am doing that. And I talked to Rusty too. And I didn't want to do it. But I did, because I knew that God doesn't compete with stuff in our lives. And so I had to put away something that was good, that I enjoyed. There was nothing inherently wrong with that thing. It was what I had made of it. It was the place that had held in my life. And so I gave that up. And a few months later, we got this invitation to pursue joining global missions, to join, to move to Africa. And I thought, Lord, no. We are at a wonderful church. We have a wonderful home. We have a wonderful community. We have 3 children. This just isn't really a great time. It doesn't really fit with my plan. But we committed to some really intense prayer and seeking and discernment. And I just know down deep in my soul that this is where God's calling us, and I'm going to get to teach and serve and learn so many new things, become a part of a wonderful mission family. And so I know that God is calling us out a little bit. I read to you the verse about God, or Jesus calling us to lighten our load. And when I heard about the possibility of moving to Africa, it felt like a heavy burden. But God has, over the last year or more, taught me that my stuff and my security and my plan is the load. And that if I will let that stuff go, like as we're watching all the stuff leave our house, and as I actively let go of things that I love, things that are good things, and one of them is really wanting to make people happy and really wanting people to like me and think that we're doing the right thing. But God's telling me that that's the load I have to let go, and the only load I have to carry is finding my whole heart and identity in Him. And that's what we're doing with this call, because we know that He's called us, and we're doing it. And so I'm feeling the lightness more and more every day. I want to leave you just with a psalm that I've always loved. It's called the Psalm of Trust and Security. It's Psalm 16. God has just brought this to me in different seasons of life, and it's become important again right now. Protect me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the holy ones in the land, they're noble, in whom is all my delight. Those who choose another God multiply their sorrows. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names upon my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I keep the Lord always before me because he is at my right hand. I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart is glad. My soul rejoices. My body rests secure. For you do not give me up to Sheol or let your faithful ones see the pit. You show me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore.
Thanks, Lauren. For myself, I became a Christian when I was 11. My family didn't go to church when I was young, and then my great grandma started taking my mom and I to church, and I remember being gripped by the stories that they told, but especially I've always been gripped by the power of story, but the stories, and especially the stories of Jesus and the person of Jesus, the type of preaching and the type of church that I was in, the type of pastors I think that we had, really emphasized the character of Jesus. And I remember just being sort of overwhelmed with who he was and wanting to know and follow Jesus. And so that's what I think made the most lasting impact on me as a young person. And that's why when I was 11, I was baptized and came to faith. And I'm no longer a part of the non-denominational denomination I was a part of, but I'm really, that's how I always say it. But I'm really grateful for those people. I remember them fondly, for the pastors who taught me. I remember one summer where I went, and I was the only teen, and a guy and I just went through the book of Matthew together. And those kinds of things were really formative for me. But back to those earliest days of faith, I remember just being gripped with this idea. I think it's summed up well by the person of Paul in general, the Apostle Paul. But Philippians 3 and the way that he, just his language throughout all of his letters, his writings. But I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and joining in his suffering. And he goes on. But he always expresses things very beautifully and simply, but in a complex manner, that it's not so simple, and there's always more to it, and it's meeting Christ and following Christ as I have come to know it, and as I try to teach that and preach, is not some formula or equation or like a box that you check, but it's an event that grips you and changes you. You are changed by knowing Christ, and you are interpreted by him, by it, and in your life forever is changed. And so these stories like Saul becoming Paul, where so clearly, his life was just reoriented, those stories always stuck with me. And I think back to my childhood, but especially the summer after my junior year in high school. I always come to this time because it was the sort of catalytic, the point where things came together. I had been making some stupid decisions. I had faith, but I didn't really know Jesus, and it just all came together that summer at several camps and small group I was a part of and things. And there's so many different stories that I could talk to, but that's where I first knew God was calling me into ministry. I didn't want to accept it. I wanted to be a lawyer and make a bunch of money and make a job out of arguing with people. And my daughter laughs because she knows I can do that. But I knew God had something different for me, and one of the things I think back to in particular as I was preparing for tonight was at one of the camps I went to that summer. We had this amazing opportunity where our worship leader was Rich Mullins, and it was in Colorado, and I remember one night, like, I mean, just I didn't know a lot about him. I knew some of him, and in hearing his testimony and seeing his life in front of us, and I remember talking to him at his Jeep. He's leaning against his Jeep that it rolled, and he died in it just, I think, months later. But I remember thinking, wow, this guy is the most talented musician I've ever seen. He is so dynamic. He speaks so well. He's so humble. He had everything. He could be making millions and millions of dollars. Why is he here leading a bunch of teenagers in worship? Why is he spending his life living on the Navajo Nation, teaching them? I found out more about his life and how he had made the intentional decision to live below the poverty level and not really own much of anything and give everything away. And I remember just being gripped by that and thinking, wow, this is, I don't know, I can't make sense out of this guy's life, but this is where it's at. This guy has, as much as you can have Jesus figured out, he has him figured out, and he's living his life following him. And of course, dying soon after, that kind of stuck with me. But that's one of those moments that I look back to, and I think that was a snapshot or a mosaic into what it means to be a Christ follower. And I'm just convinced that there's always more to it. I always use that kind of imagery. And I'm a restless person. I really, as a theologian, I resonate. I'm nowhere on their level, but I resonate with people like Martin Luther and like John Wesley, like what I saw in Rich Mullins, who were anxious and restless about their faith. They weren't content to just have it figured out, but were constantly racked with questions, and not like, will they be saved or not, but just, are they being faithful? I'm that kind of a person, and for a long time I've known God is calling me to more, and have wondered what that more might be. And I've known for a long time that I'm called to preach and I'm called to teach in some combination, and I always thought it was going to be in this combination, and then it turned out to be this combination, and I've had a lot of anxiety trying to figure out how do I balance these callings out, these gifts, these things that I'm interested in, but I know that boiling it all down, there's a couple things about ministry that I have latched onto that I know I look back and I think these are things that I love. And when this is happening, it's like I'm in the sweet spot and the right things are happening. And some of those things are any sort of international or diverse, multicultural settings. I just love learning and sharing when I'm in settings with pastors or lay people or whoever, but who have different backgrounds, who I can hear their stories and I can share my story, and just seeing the global kingdom of God and what it looks like is something that really energizes me. I love discipleship. Some of my fondest memories of ministry are youth ministry in particular, where I had a great group of teenagers and got to just help them mature in faith, and then afterwards watching what their lives have, the directions that their lives have taken, and then also thinking back to university and to seminary and the kind of education I wanted in my PhD, where I didn't want to just study and learn things in my head. I wanted to be discipled. I wanted professors who would share their life with me and who would mentor me, who would come in and critique me if I was being foolish or making mistakes, and I wanted that, and have always been drawn towards professors who would not just share knowledge with me, but would share their life with me and would share Jesus with me. It's easy as a professional religious person or academic especially to not even believe or care about what you teach, and I just am not interested in that. And I've always been drawn towards those who it's clear this matters to them. And so I've always desired to have that kind of a role where I can pastor students, basically. And so with that kind of a background and a little bit of glimpse into who I am, about a year ago, I got approached with this possibility, and the first thing I thought was, great, 11 years ago, 10 years ago, I was really, really interested in this exact thing. We went to Kenya while we were living in Scotland and helped take a group of teens and loved it, and I was able to give a lecture at the university, and I just felt drawn. I've always felt interested in Africa and really, really enjoyed it, and we saw, like, the difficult settings and also the nice settings there, and I thought, I could do this. God, if this is where you would want me to serve, just let me know. Make it work out, and we'll go. Remember, Lauren kind of more hesitantly was like, yeah, maybe, okay. But there wasn't a response. And for about 10 years, I've done some of the things that are necessary to try to be on the list for things like that, and I don't mean any offense to any of my colleagues, but most of my colleagues are not necessarily interested in going to a place like African Nazarene University. It's so daunting. It's a big, I mean, we're selling most of our possessions. We're moving our family across the world, let alone this virus. But I've always felt like I would do that. I'm interested in that. And there wasn't an answer to that. And instead of that, there were lots of teaching opportunities as an adjunct professor, lots of churches to pastor, lots of difficult things that we learned from, and some difficult churches and some wonderful churches and some difficult decisions and some wonderful opportunities. And all of that has made me and us a better pastor, better couple. And then, of course, now we get approached and think, okay, now that we're finally in a really comfortable position, like Lauren was saying, where we fit in well, we've got great people to serve, we're taken care of well, we're out of debt, we're loving life, that kind of thing. We've got 3 kids that are wonderful, but quite a handful. How do we, I mean, flying anywhere with them is tough, let alone 20 hours of plane rides. But it felt like, no, this is the thing you've been asking for a long time about, and would you be open to this? And so we tentatively said sure, and began a long period of discernment and prayer. And it was good to have that year, because we really went up and down. But all along the way, God just, every question that we had, we would write them down or we'd talk about them, and then we would get an answer to it. And okay, that answers that, and we could move on. And we just kept getting reassurance and comfort and knowledge that God would provide for us. And it made it easy when it finally happened to say yes, even though it was difficult to that meant saying no and walking away from our wonderful church. But that's a little bit about where we've been and why we're here. Lauren is super humble, far more than me, and has always been a great example to me about faith and life. But from the moment I met Lauren, I knew she was somebody who was good for me, is a great example for me. She checks me, and she's a good balance to me, and I learn from her constantly. And she has always been a person who just is full of God's presence and wants to know God more. She's sweet and humble and genuine. And anyways, I say that because I knew that, I mean, she was the person who helped me discern my call to ministry 20 years ago. And I knew that living life with her, sharing life with her, would involve these kinds of things. And the last thing I think I would share before I move on to the questions that our district superintendent has sent in is, a lot of people hear this kind of thing and think, what are you thinking, with your children? And that just sounds so crazy and so scary, especially right now. As I said, I'm a restless person and restless about faith. And I've been, I think I'm just that way in general. I don't sit down for very long. Yeah, she could take the naps and I can run around and do things. I remember in college just being restless about my faith and what God was calling me. And I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine who was kind of a mentor, became just a good close friend who I just saw about a week ago, my friend Brian Day, who's from the Napa church originally here in NorCal. And I remember he said something to me like this. It was a long time ago. But he said something along the lines of, yeah, if you go to that place or do that sort of a thing, yes, there might be danger involved. But I think that the safest place you could ever be is to be where God has called you to be, and to be doing what God has equipped you and prepared you for. And that really stood out to me. He's one of those guys full of those one-liners. A lot of time they're dumb and hilarious, but sometimes they're really meaningful. And that has lasted with me for a long time. And so that was one of those things floating around in my head over this last year as we discerned and we prayed, was that, yeah, there's danger and there's unknown, and certainly right now there's all sorts of unknown, but God has been preparing us for this as a couple for 20 years. We're about to have our 18th anniversary. We were together for 4 years before that, so 22 years. And as people now for a long time, Lauren less than me, but this is what God has called us for. This is what God has prepared us for, and why wouldn't we say yes to God's call? As the message that we've put online that we're sharing with churches and people has to do with calling, some of our personal story of calling and Samuel 3, and it's about calling. God has called us. God has equipped us. God has provided for us abundantly. God is faithful to us, and I know that's going to continue to be the case as we move forward into the unknown. We need Daisy to sing now, as you say, Into the Unknown. Frozen 2, parent reference, or Into Danger even. What's Up, Danger? All kinds of kid movie references. Okay. Well, with that, we've got a couple questions, 3. One of them is fairly short. We got about 11 more minutes, so we should be okay. We'll move through these quickly, and then we'll have our worship team. We're going to sing one last song together. Albert, Reverend Hung, asked us, what were your own family's convictions and connections to missions prior to becoming missionaries yourselves? And I took that to mean sort of like what the family backgrounds were from. And in that, I would say none, really. That, yes, I'm first-generation Nazarene. Lauren is, her family was at the Church of the Nazarene at the time. They aren't anymore, so technically you're second. You could say third generation. You never know. But the point is, I'm the first pastor in my family, period, and your family in that sense. You have a cousin who was a pastor for a while. But this is all new territory. And it's just like it was. We were on a roller coaster, and it's easy to be on a roller coaster when you're the one at least in the front seat, or you waited in the line to get on it. To use the analogy, they didn't really. So they also had to go in the ups and downs. But they're so loving and supportive, our family, and they would share a lot of hesitation and sadness, and yet I think also a lot of hopeful prayer and support as well. If they were here tonight, I know they're watching at home in New Mexico, where we're from. But so the short answer would be none. We are in new territory. Do you want to add to that one, or this is a pretty easy one for us to answer? I think.
I read that question to be about like our own family's mission in serving. I don't know. So we've certainly tried to. Cameras over here. We've certainly tried to treat our neighborhood and communities and churches as our mission field, and there are some people in this room who showed us how to do that really, really well. And even before, I'm just thinking of teaching, that I always looked at that as my mission field as well, and I sought out schools and districts where I felt like I was really needed, because I love to love on children in my classroom, and so those kiddos were my mission field. That's kind of how I read it.
Yeah, the second question had to do with this district, with the NorCal district. Hi, NorCal. Glad to be with you, sort of, and hopefully maybe next year at Assembly or the year after in some way we can physically get together with you when we're back in the country. But what could be the connection? How could us going as an extension of you connect, benefit, that sort of thing, the district? And I thought of a couple things, and then Lauren can jump in. For me, the main reason why I and we are needed there is, I think, to help prepare kingdom leaders in a place where there's just an abundance of Christians and of Nazarenes. It's a wonderful school, but they are very short on educators, and certainly they can't pay like some places to be able to recruit educators to come over. There is a huge need to just go and live life and disciple and share the gospel in terms of equipping these people for ministry and for leadership. Africa, as I've been sharing, is already becoming the leader in terms of per capita numbers of Christians in the world, and it's just projected to just skyrocket in that direction over the coming years. And as we see in our own denomination with 2 of our general superintendents, Eugenio Duarte and Filomeo Chambo, both from the continent of Africa, and odds are this is going to continue, and it should. We are a diverse global church of the Nazarene, and that is a good thing. And I think the more that we see international leadership leading their areas and then becoming global leaders in our church, I think in a place like NorCal where we are sensitive to that, I think that's a big positive. So I mean, that's a long game, right, if that makes sense, but I think helping to develop and train future leaders, not just in Africa, but in the world, is why I'm going, and why I think we are especially poised to go to Kenya, to African Nazarene University, to help contribute to a more diverse future for the Church of the Nazarene as a whole, and then also just the opportunity for partnerships. We hope to come back every year. The interwebs that we're all on are so easy, right? It's so easy for us to connect. So at any point, we could connect and share stories about what's going on there, hear stories about what's going on here in NorCal. if anybody ever wants to make the trek over there and do work or just experience life, join in an educational cohort. I'll be helping to oversee a doctoral program there. There's all kinds of ways that people could connect, and I think that we could be catalysts for making those connections, and I hope, and I think that would benefit the global church and would benefit NorCal. Anything that you would want to add to that one? No? I'm going to let Lauren field the third question, and then I can finish it off then. But basically the question was, I'll read the formal question. This is a good one. How do you hope your time in Kenya will change you as a family and as a pastor?
I think that means it's meant for you. Wow, it's already changing us as a family. Rusty and I were talking that there's so much about this already that we are just unprepared for. We're just having to completely trust in the Lord. We've found ourselves already in some pretty humbling positions where we have to give up and let go of some things that we typically take care of ourselves or know are going to be taken care of for us, and instead find ourselves in a posture of receiving, needing to ask for help. And our family, I think our bonds are just going to be tested a bit. We really need to be strong as a family. And actually, that's been one benefit, I think, of the coronavirus quarantine is that our family has really, really strengthened in so many ways. In fact, our older two kids, when this all happened, didn't realize they were going to be sharing a room in Kenya. And a couple of months ago, they actually moved in together just because they wanted to. And they started sharing a room.
Never happened even months before.
So just relying on each other in new ways. And as we've found in most of the churches that we've gotten to minister in, we learn so much from the people here. And I know from our brief time in Africa, the people there have so much to teach us. And so I know that there's a lot of lessons about following Christ. I think that we're going to get a lot more than we're going to give, which is often the case in ministry. And so we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, I would just tack on to the way that Lauren answered that. I would answer the exact same way. I pray every day. I've really latched onto this idea of sentence prayers. I learned from a book that I read with some friends recently. Just really simple prayers, like trying to, as a theologian, I like to complexify everything, and maybe I don't need to do that. I pray very simply for myself several times a day, that my kids would be good people, that they would be great friends, and that they would love God. And I think, and that's becoming more of a mantra, and this is my job as a parent and as a Christian. And the kinds of decisions that we make for the future ought to be decisions that would help facilitate that. They don't necessarily need to do other things. There's all kinds of goals that we have for kids, right or wrong, but those simple ones that I think are lasting life goals for them. And I think this is really going to, of course, be challenging, but I think it ought to enhance and achieve that. I think simply that it will enhance and enlarge our perspectives on what it is to do church and what it is to be the church. It's so great to get these kinds of examples and opportunities to worship with and learn from and teach in all the different kinds of settings that we'll be exposed to. And that's just nothing but a blessing and an opportunity for me and for us to learn more that we can then use to teach and equip others for ministry. And then for myself, thinking back to how I started, it's a test or an opportunity for radical trust. It's hard selling some of the things. It's hard coming to terms with the kinds of decisions that we have to say goodbye to certain things or some of the freedoms and that we're told in life that this is what life is all about, and that's not the case. And there's danger involved. There's unknown. It's an enormous pay cut, things like that. And so all of that, though, comes back to that restlessness of wanting to know Christ, the power of his resurrection, and sharing in his sufferings, that somehow we would be able to, thinking in other parts of Philippians, have the mind of Christ, that we would be sanctified people, that we would be holy people with and for others. So I think that's the opportunity that this holds for our family. And I hope that you'll pray with us for that. we're going to start our Zoom question and answer in just a minute. So I think the worship team will gather. I'm going to just share with you just really quickly as they do so, because the question is, and of course that's part of this, how could you give to support us? We've sent out some letters recently. We have an online questionnaire that you can fill out. The best thing to do is go to Facebook, type in Rusty and Lauren Bryan. You'll find our page, like it, follow us there. That's kind of the central hub for our connections and our communication. We'll do newsletters in the future. We have a blog, but we're not there yet. So right now it's just mainly Facebook. On there, you'll find out more about how to follow us and connect. And you could sign up so we can send you information, we can send you mailings, that sort of thing. We would love for you to pray for us. We mean that genuinely. We need your prayer. This next week's going to be super challenging as we do the last bit of the packing. We've had a difficult week in terms of the enemy wrestling with us and questions and all this virus stuff. We could use your prayers right now. We could use your support in terms of maybe in the future we connect in ways with you and your church. Maybe you want to come to Kenya. Maybe you want to have us come to your church. And then finally, yes, we need financial support. We are sent by the Church of the Nazarene and paid by the church. And so the support that we raise, we don't have to raise our salaries, but we do have to raise money to help support the cost of living and doing ministry there. And the first year is always a lot more expensive than in subsequent years. So we could use your help and your support in that way. If you want to give to support us, if you haven't seen our newsletter, been connected or anything, we'll share it again later. But the easiest thing is to go to the Church of the Nazarene, Nazarene.org. And if you go to Nazarene.org, that's our denominational website. There's a search bar, and you just type in Rusty and Lauren Bryan. And if you type in our name, we may even be able to digitally put that up for you. I don't know. If you just type in our names, Rusty and Lauren Bryan, it pulls up our profile page. And on there, you'll find a video. If you want to play our video for your church and share our story with them, you'll find information about our family. You'll see our picture. And at the bottom, you can give. You could schedule us to come to your church at this point, probably next year or the year after, but you could try. But you could give to support us. That's the easiest way to do that. If you give in that way, it's tax deductible, and we appreciate your support. We will follow up with you if you choose to do so. Otherwise, feel free to just contact us in any way. You can find our information there on Facebook, and we can answer your questions. We'll Zoom with you in just a few minutes. But we'd love your support, whether it's prayer, whether it's in person coming, or whether it is in financial support. Let's sing a closing song, and I'm going to give us a benediction. And I'm going to open the Zoom up, but I'm just going to tell everybody to wait a second if you're there in the Zoom. And then probably we'll get going at about 7:05 because of the song. Thank you so much.
Let your ears ring
So going to give you a benediction, but also this is just an invitation. You can certainly take off at this point, but if you're not into the Zoom yet, you can go ahead and jump into the Zoom, and then we'll just answer questions for whoever you are, whatever questions you might have. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. You're dismissed. Join us in the Zoom discussion. Thanks. All right, looks like we've got a few here. Yeah, join us here. How's everybody doing? Oh, it's...
We're good.
Hi.
Good.
Hey,
It's so fun to see you.
I know. Now we're doubled.
Oh, it has to do with so they're able to broadcast the Zoom as part of the live stream, and I think it kind of chooses different people when you speak, and it broadcasts that. So yeah, when you're doubled, you're blessed, I guess.
Oh, so this chat is part of your YouTube live stream right now?
I think it is. Is that right? Is this on the live stream? Yes, it's still on the live stream. Yeah.
We better behave then. I'm sitting up straight.
We could probably close it. I wasn't sure how. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we can.
Thank you all so much.